I mean, there's different approaches to this. At the conference, we're taking the approach of human-centered AI, of really thinking about it means leading with empathy, with ethics, and lived experience. So it's really, technology should support the human spirit, not replace it. At the end of the day, that's the core.
AI isn't the future, it's now. And whether you're in HR, sales, operations, or leadership, the choices you make today will determine whether you thrive or get left behind.
Today, y'all, I am so excited to be joined by Dr. Felicia Newhouse, tech executive, founder of the AI-powered Women Conference at MIT, and a passionate advocate for women's leadership in AI. Now, together, we are going to dive into how women can harness the power of artificial intelligence, the unique vision behind her groundbreaking conference, and what it takes to lead with both innovation and heart in the era of AI. So, Dr. Felicia, welcome to the Voice or Victim podcast. How are you this morning?
Yeah, doing good. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, we are so excited to have you here, and I want to dive straight into the conference. So, what inspired you to launch the AI-powered Women Conference, and how does it differ from all of these other AI events we see today?
So I think this conference was born out of both urgency and possibility and hope. I mean, as we know, the world that we're living in is changing at rapid speed, right? And a lot of that is driven by technological advancements. And really, if we look at the past century for humanity, starting with like the Industrial Revolution and us interfacing with different types of machines and the Industrial Revolution, and then that evolving into, more complex machines and mainframes and computers and laptops, iPhones and AI. We've really played this interfacing role. And I think that has progressively burned us out and separated us from our humanness. And so we're at this really interesting pivotal moment where not only is AI shaping the entire trajectory of our human species, it's also really providing, I think, this kind of magical opportunity for us to outsource back to AI, to stop playing that interfacing role and to come back into our humanness. So this conference really, I think, came from that. There's kind of threefold. One is I keep seeing women either frozen in fear or sitting on the sidelines of AI transformation, not because they lack talent, but I think because they really lack access and context and community around it. And a lot of the tech events, I go to a lot of them. And I've felt like over the past few years since, ChatGPT really hit and the AI boom kind of happened, a lot of these AI events, while they're wonderful and they're very focused on innovation, they're very heady, they're very transactional, they're very data heavy, and they're very male dominated. And so we really saw this not just an opportunity, but really a critical need for a safe space to be created for women leaders to come together and to really talk about how we're playing a role in shaping the future of our species with this new technology that I would also call an emerging species, and to really get together and think about what it means to be a leader now and to be responsible in that leadership role, and in that shaping of AI, to really come together in community and to start thinking about, when we look at technologies now, how can we also be inspired by the history of technology, and technology not just in machines in the past 100 years, but technologies like storytelling and intuition, how we build community together, technologies that are healing technologies. So we kind of have this theme at our conference of ancestral intelligence meets artificial intelligence, and this concept that a lot of the most powerful parts of what makes us human are not outside of us. They're actually already very innately within us, in our biology, our physiology, our spirituality, how we connect with one another, these very, very basic innate parts of what makes us uniquely human. And we're really challenging people to come to this conference rethinking their role as leaders in that, because I think there's really this pivotal opportunity, a moment in history right now where the face of leadership is changing, and what's required of a leader to be successful in the AI landscape is changing, because this whole kind of super heady, endless growth, burn your team out, go faster, faster, bigger, more competitive. I just don't think it's sustainable in the world that we're merging into now. And I think the traits that are going to be most valued and most sacred in the workplace and alongside AI symbiotically are going to be empathy and emotional intelligence and compassion and creativity, human-centered relationships, human-centered business strategies, human-centered AI deployments. And so that's really what this conference is bridging. So first off, we're going to be upskilling women with AI and giving them tangible upskilling. And then second, we're going to be redefining that leadership role and how we can develop ourselves as very effective leaders in the workplace. And then third is really this more existential, spiritual, embodied component that's reflective around who we are, in this massive change and chaos. And how do we become more embodied? So this goes back to like mindfulness and yoga and breath work and storytelling and community. And so we will have in the middle part of the conference for a couple hours, midday, we have this women's village where people actually leave the conference hall and go out into this big tent on the grass. And we have all these different embodied experiences they can engage in, from qigong to breath work to storytelling and poetry and being in yurts and, kind of stepping back in time, so to speak, to harness these ancient technologies and wisdom that we have innate in us.
Okay, first of all, can we just say, hands down, you can tell this conference is planned by women. And I love it because it just blends everything that I'm passionate about. But I'm leaning so heavy into AI right now because my mission is to bring more women into positions of power and keep them there. And studies are showing that women are not leaning into AI at the same rate that men are. And so when I see conferences like this and women out there like you who are doing the damn thing, I get really excited about it. But what is at risk for women if they don't lean in to this wave of AI that is coming?
Yeah, that's the less fun part of the conversation. And I mean, the research, as you know, is showing that women are much less engaged. There's still only 20% of, really driving impact here from both a builder and a user standpoint. Women are, lacking that visibility and that really just entanglement in the biases and the algorithms. But we all know that already. I think the big risk is that we are building a world that is not fully inclusive. That is not balanced for all of us to partake in. So it's less, the end result is not about women. It's about all of us being in a balanced world that is healthy and sustainable. There's plenty of studies that show this. And my own PhD research that I did was really focused on women leaders and balanced workplaces. And the research shows over and over and over and over again that when you have a balanced team at the executive level, at the political level, at the economic level, in any country and any strata, it shows that when you have a balanced team with gender and diversity, the team is more effective and the bottom line is richer and we all benefit. The products we put out are more effective and they're more focused on the human needs. And so, yeah, when it comes to driving positive change in the world, it's a terrifying concept to think that women aren't part of the development and the responsible usage and deployment of a technology that is not like anything. It's unprecedented. And I get frustrated sometimes when I hear people just compare this to like the internet boom or these other big technologies waves we've been through. Like I've been there, I've lived through them. I was an executive for 25 years and I helped build a lot of the things around big data and then machine learning, deployed a lot of really interesting products. And it's just completely unlike anything we've seen. Even just the rate of change is not something our brain can even process. It's moving so quickly and it's exponential, right? With every subsequent month that goes by, the rate of change is going up, right? So for every month that goes by that women aren't a deep and integral and centric part of these conversations, of these decisions, of these deployments, of these builds, of the future development of everything, right? And it's not even just on the build side, it's also on the usage side of actually using, like you were saying, women aren't using the technology as much either. And there's a recent Harvard study that just came out, I think it was beginning of last month, that came out that talked about that. That's very, very concerning. This is shaping the world that we're going to live in. And a lot of, people that are close to the building of these technologies are saying we have like 24 to 36 months before these windows really close. And our opportunity to really deeply shape the trajectory is closing to some extent in different areas. So this is something that's critical and urgent.
And I don't think people realize how quickly it's coming. I don't know. What's your perspective on that?
Well, what's coming? Like AGI or like what aspect?
The singularity? Like, no,
it.
Yeah, like I just want to chime in. One, the event sounds amazing, first of all, right? The cause, the mission, the how you're going about it, right? And even pre-AI, I invested in a company called the Diversity Movement. I've been really supportive of a lot of different initiatives, and I would say to folks, all the time is like, it's just good business. Like abstract out the feel good, to your point, right? Having a diverse leadership team, have one that's empathetic, one that understands, how could you sell to a broad-based audience if you don't even have that kind of representation within your own organization and leadership team? How do you know what folks that don't look like you want to buy or what services or goods matter to them, right? And so, and to your point, when we go down this AI kind of path, right? If women's voices, if minorities, of people that, underrepresented groups aren't actively using it, you're effectively training, the models, or you're training the AI itself to not think about you, right? And that is going to your point, 24 months from now, you can't get it back, right? And so we need more folks to lean in. But I think, so what was the crux of the question? What were you trying to get at?
For me, it's really like AI just being such an integral piece of everyone's everyday work. Because right now it is for some. Like, it is an integral tool in my life. I use it every which way. But I interact with so many people who have never downloaded ChatGPT on their phone. And to speak to your point, I do worry for a lot of them because they are women and they just they haven't even dipped their pinky toe in. And so where does that end them up in 36 months? I don't know. But Felicia, you've already mentioned it, and you've talked about this human-centered approach to AI, and I would love to hear what that means to you.
At the conference, we're taking the approach of human-centered AI, of really thinking about, it means leading with empathy, with ethics, and lived experience. So it's really, technology should support the human spirit, not replace it at the end of the day. That's the core. Human-centered AI, I think, acknowledges our interconnectedness, our values, our dignity as humans. And it means building systems that are sustainable, that reduce burnout, not increase it, not accelerate it. It means asking not just, can we build it, but should we? Who does this serve? What are the long-term ramifications of this? How does it affect the next generation? I mean, this is back to why, for us, it's, in our opinion and our mission, it's so important to also have the leadership development piece of this to be so central, and the mental health component as well. Like, the number of teams, and the research backs this up, that are disengaged, that are burned out, that technology is supposed to be helping, right? And I was a tech executive for 25 years, and I just left my recent company about a year and a half ago. And we would keep adding technologies. We would keep adding to our tech stack, right? And so the mindset there is, as we add to our tech stack, we're going to be, more human centric, and we're going to free up time, and we're going to have more time to do all these creative things. That's not what happened. And I know that's the case for a lot of companies, that as they add to their tech stack, they're actually just adding a heavier burden onto their teams of more tech to manage, to navigate through, to train their teams on, to be scattered mentally. The human brain is not designed to be scattered to that degree. We need more simplicity, and we need more of that, human to human time. So with the human centeredness, it's really thinking about how do we truly offload our team so they can be in the spirit of creativity and flow and that human, face time, and to not be burdened by the technology, but to actually be freed up by it. And it's kind of the narrative. Like you go on LinkedIn and see all these people posting like, AI is going to free you up from this and free you up from that. And that's so great. But I don't see that actually happening yet. And I think practically speaking, the reason why people are still feeling really burned out by the technologies and just burned out overall is because we're not going back to the human centeredness. Like, what do the humans in your company need? What does your team need? Where are they suffering? Where is their mental health burnout? Where is their overload? Like, what are they actually needing? And I don't think we're asking these basic human questions of our teams in a corporate setting. And I think, right now there's just a massive existential burnout as well because people are fearful. They're fearful for their jobs. They're fearful for the future of their industry, of where it's headed, of, what's going to be automated. And I don't think there's enough attention being drawn to that very real and very justified anxiety and fear of the unknown. And I don't think enough investment is being made by these companies to be human-centered. And what I'm seeing, I'm also a consultant. I work with companies deploying AI. And what I've seen is that a lot of these companies will stand up these really wonderful AI deployments and systems and agents, and they have to end up tearing them down because they're not actually integrated well in their teams or adopted, and they're rejected, right? So I think that there's a very real, investment risk here too, if companies aren't doing this in a human-centered way. And before even entertaining the thought of deploying any sort of AI at their company, thinking about, what are the humans where are they suffering? Where are they struggling? Where are they burned out? And where do they actually need help and support?
The thing I was going to add to that is just because we've seen the same thing, right? And people ask me like, why, it's like, hey, why our partnership, right? She's a chief people officer, right? I'm a CEO. Like I'm more on the tech side. She's more on the people side. And what we've known for a long time now is like, this is a technology that's impacting every single human on the planet, every single employee, right? And to your point, you're making investments and you're talking publicly about the business cases and these things. If you took 1/10 of what you've described to do this pilot program and put it back into upskilling your workforce, right, you're going to see greater adoption, right? I always tell folks, like, I've been in digital transformation consulting for a long time now. This is the first time in my generation where I've seen something that impact every single employee, right? You used to have to only be worried about one or two potential saboteurs in the IT department or the marketing group. Now you got 90% rowing against you, and you seem surprised that these things aren't working out, right? And I think that goes back to something you said earlier, which is around leadership has to change and evolve. One thing that came up on a recent podcast was Moderna moved to having HR and IT, come under one roof, and the chief people officer is the one overseeing it all, right? Because what they're recognizing, a lot of folks need to come to grips with, is the way that we've organized these companies has to radically change, and people have to be at the center of it, right? My only tangent into MIT, I did a couple of AI leadership transformation courses, and it went over very well. And I've had some conversations with some of the folks there even recently. And I repositioned our Walk West marketing company as an AI fluent human experiences company, right? Because I was saying you have to be intentional with the human element of this. This is radically different. So she's usually asking the questions. I do have a question for you, which is, what is outside of the AI side of it, where I'm actually very intrigued is from your conference, how are you upskilling the empathy or the leadership side? Or is that something that can't be trained and we're going to have to identify new leaders?
Yeah, it absolutely can be trained 100%. But I think it's trickier than just, training people in 2 days. This is an ongoing, it's like you're saying, I mean, it's cultural, right? Like, I mean, we can bring the leaders in for 2 days, and we are absolutely bringing, incredible PhDs, MDs, experts who are trained in emotional intelligence and psychology and mental health burnout, and people who are thinking about this from an emotional intelligence standpoint, that have studied emotional intelligence for decades, and bringing them on the stage to really talk about frameworks and blueprints to leave the leaders with. I think what we're doing at the conference is really powerful, but at the end of the day, this has to be a commitment from the leaders at the top. They have to really see the need for their leaders to immerse in a commitment, an ongoing commitment to bettering themselves and to rethinking the type of leader they're going to evolve into, right? This is evolutionary. This is really about like, how do we evolve as humans? How do we evolve as leaders? How do we evolve our cultures and communities in a world that is going to be dominated by AI and it's changing by the day? I think there's really this mass just kind of existential crisis going on with humans right now because I think we're so used to the automation and to being that interface role, like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of our talk, of like interfacing with these technologies. Like if we really step back into just our pure humanness of like us with another human, that starts to get a little bit more complicated and I think a little bit more scary for people to think about, even them as a human with themselves. Like, what is my relationship with myself? What is my awareness of my fears and blind spots? And, you know, I think there's been some movement around this the past 20 years or so with like leadership development and emotional intelligence and things like that. But I think this is like a whole other level that we have to double down on, because the amount of change management that's required during this transformational time, especially that we're going to be living through in the next 24 months, is going to be unprecedented. And it's really going to require, I think the leaders that are going to emerge and really, in really being truly impactful and sustainable in this are going to have, I'm going to use the word spiritual. I think there's going to be a spiritual component to this, not religious. It's spiritual. It's the ability to reflect on the human I am, the human I'm becoming, and how, you know, what is our purpose in all of this? And really thinking about the end result of how we're impacting humanity. How are we impacting our bigger communities? What is the purpose of the product I'm building? What is my unique purpose? And collectively, how are we really bridging together to make sense of all of this? I really do think it's that big, what's happening right now. And so I think that spiritual reflection component as a leader can be really powerful.
One thing that you said earlier that really kind of caught my interest was you talked about focusing on what people need now and what they're asking for. And in my role as a chief people officer, ever since COVID hit back in March of 2020, it's been this need for connection and a need for community. And even though the world is back to, quote, normal, right? People are still craving that. And I think they haven't really stepped back fully into the community and the connections that we had before. And it looks different today. But what I want to ask you is, what role do you think community plays in helping women succeed in the AI space?
Yeah, I think community really, it removes the isolation that I think so many women feel when stepping into tech specifically, but also, like you said, since COVID as well. I mean, there's a lot of studies that show a lot of us have struggled from a mental health standpoint and having some form of social anxiety. And I've heard that over and over again, talking to different leaders that are coming to this conference too, of like, you know, I'm so grateful for a place to come in person because people are just, I think, starting to get over the hump of really craving that community back in their lives again. Zoom is great, but there's just magic that happens in person energetically when you're with other humans that nothing can replace that. And so I think when, you know, I think about navigating AI with clarity and compassion, and you see other leaders doing that, you think I can too. Right. And I think that's the power of community and being in person. And with this conference, we have very painstakingly, carefully curated the speaker lineup and the collaborators. We've been very careful to select people that we're not just bringing in like these huge names that speak all over the world and they have their speaking slot. We're really looking at people that are super powerful bridge builders. That understand AI and are technologists and really understand that world deeply, but they also are holding this completely other, seemingly opposite domain. So to give an example, we have a woman who is a technologist and she's a PhD at Villanova, super steeped in AI, but she also is a Franciscan nun, and is looking at things from a futurist standpoint and spiritual standpoint and consciousness standpoint for humans. We have another woman who's deeply steeped in AI and worked with Google on, launching a whole host of Google products, but she's also a poet. We have a woman who is deeply steeped in AI, but she also is looking at the mental health crisis we're all going through, and how AI can help support us in bridging better human relationships with us, and how AI could also hurt us in bridging those human relationships and hurt us mental health wise, and how do we shape that trajectory. So we're really looking at people that are bringing that, deep reflective human component in for our speakers, so that these worlds are, like we're calling it, hackers and healers, and ancestral intelligence meets artificial intelligence, like people that are really bridging those worlds. We have indigenous leaders as well that are bringing that indigenous wisdom, and have studied with some of the top indigenous leaders in the world, of that ancient wisdom that can absolutely and legitimately be brought into technology development. And there's actually some really interesting nonprofits that are being brought together to bring that indigenous wisdom and education into that tech development, because it is important for that tech to learn what makes us uniquely human. And when you think of AI ethics, I always find it fascinating with these conferences. They always like, well, we need to have an ethical panel, right? And I would argue that ethics is not just like talking about responsible AI deployment. It's much, 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 much deeper than that. What we're building ethically requires us to get very deeply in tune with who we are uniquely as humans, and what makes us uniquely human, and what is the most beautiful aspects of our humanity that has already existed for thousands of years. It's not something we have to recreate. It's something we have to remember and tune into.
So how do you incorporate things like wellness and mindfulness and ancient ancient wisdom into your approach with AI?
So I'm just thinking of one of our opening sessions is it's called Leading Through Uncertainty. So emotional resilience and ethical clarity in disruptive times. So this is really talking about living through an era of profound rupture, technological acceleration, environmental collapse, political volatility, and social fragmentation. And that's all converging to create a sense of groundlessness, unlike anything we've ever known. So as women leaders, we're often expected to hold it all, right? So a lot of the women that are coming to this conference, they are repressed, they are numbed out, they are trying to hold all these teams and all this change management, and it's completely overwhelming, and it's requiring them to kind of box out their humanness in a way and just go into robot mode of trying to get shit done. But unfortunately, that's not going to work with what's happening right now, what's unfolding. So it's really requiring us to have a safe space, and that's kind of like what some of these panels are about, around acknowledging that our leaders are quietly carrying grief and fear and rage and numbness that come from navigating a very complex and at times scary world in flux. And so it's really like the women on this panel that are, from psychologist background. Another woman is from indigenous wisdom and talks about grief, and she works with people who are in death and dying, so kind of on that extreme end with grief. And then another woman who's in change management. Another woman is in mental health and bridging the Harvard Center for Mindfulness and Compassion with AI. And so kind of really talking about how we transmute burnout and isolation, anxiety into clarity and presence and inner power. And so I think it's not just, surviving the change that we're all going through. It's about really reclaiming our capacity to feel and lead with integrity and to model a different way forward for our teams and for other leaders. And so that's really what we're trying to hold in these various sessions. So that component of leadership development, this conference, is really the acknowledgement and also the modeling of it can be different, and that this does require us to some extent dismantle the outdated systems that we're leading in. And we do have to have the courage to lead that change. That does require, courage. It's not easy. But it isn't like an inside out job. We have to start kind of with ourselves, and then we have to go back as transformed leaders, bravely standing out and working to deconstruct these systems from the inside out, because they're not working anymore and they're not going to work. This whole mentality of we just go faster, 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 more, competitive. It's not only not sustainable for our economies and our businesses, it's not sustainable for our world and our humanity. So this is really a time that's calling people forth to, to step into action, right? Like we can all be afraid and we can acknowledge that, but we also need to transmute that. So that transmutation process, I think, is really important. However, and we have talked about this at great length with our advisory council for this particular conference, is you can't do that transmutation process unless you acknowledge where people are at. And I think that's the biggest mistake that we make, is these AI conferences and these dialogues, they dive right into the heady, what's more? Like, what's the next thing? What's the next shiny ball? More, competitive, innovative. And there's a time and place for that, but this is not the time. Right now is the time to have permission to slow down, and to reflect and to connect, and to dismantle and deconstruct and then rebuild from that. But you need to feel acknowledged as a leader in that. And I think to just throw people into the heady exercise of like, let's do the next thing, let's build the next thing on our tech stack, let's innovate more, it's going to crumble. It's not sustainable in that model.
So for the conference, I'm thinking any woman who is interested can come. It doesn't matter how, deep you have dove? Good Lord, do I speak today? How deep you have dived down the AI rabbit hole, right? So if you're an AI beginner, is this conference for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we also have, in addition to the kind of emotional intelligence leadership development, every other session is human AI, head, heart, right? So we're really going into these AI training sessions that are for non-technical leaders, to really build those AI skills. So we have an AI training session on building a business assistant, AI tech stack essentials, workflow automation with AI, building your first agent, going into cybersecurity and safety and security and governance, and what that means as, a corporate leader or as a business owner, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs coming to this as well. So those sessions are going to be taught by women who are, deep AI experts, and they're teachers. They're not just speakers that are speaking at you. They're actual teachers. They're going to leave you with real skills, real frameworks. And then we also have an online platform that will be having classes on there as well to train you. So this is part of a human-centered AI leadership certification. But then outside of those, we're also going to be, doing the panels where it's very focused on the leadership development pieces. And then in between each of those, we're going to have these little tiny mini 2 to 5 minute drop-ins that are like somatic breath work and sound healing, a quick meditation, a quick intention setting. So that kind of drops people back into the spiritual reflection of being human and taking all of this in, right? Because there's a lot we're building a transformational container, and that can be a lot to integrate.
I was going to say that's great. It just gives you that moment to drop back in.
Yeah, incredible. To drop back in and integrate. Yeah.
Incredible. Dr. Felicia, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions or the fears that women have about AI, and how can we address that?
I would say some of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that AI is not able to actually help us in our humanness. I think, like, if you look at the recent research that came out from Harvard and looking at women and why they're not using this, there's a bit of this I want to say almost ethical crisis that, like, if you look at the actual interviews with these women and the research and break it down, the women mentally are feeling like they're cheating using this technology, or they're a fraud, or that it's unethical. There's like this internal ethical struggle with them interacting with these. And I don't entirely understand why that's different for women than it is for men. And we could break down all the different gender identity pieces and lived experiences and yada, yada another time. But like, it is what it is. Women have a different experience when interacting with this. And so that ethical dilemma that they're experiencing when they interact with AI, and more importantly, when they use it and apply it to their work, right? And they put something publicly that was AI driven out, they have this ethical dilemma. And I would say that can be mostly wiped away if you learn how to train the models, if you learn how to prompt the models, if you learn how to also do the deep reflection of you as a leader and you with your team and you with your customers. It's back to that human-centered AI component. How deeply do you know your customer? How deeply do you know yourself as a leader? So if I'm interacting with that AI from an authentic place, then the output is authentic, right? It's back to that garbage in, garbage out with inputs and outputs with any AI LLM, right? What you put in, if that's authentic and you've really trained that to really know you inside and out, to know your customers inside and out, to know your business brand and what makes your brand authentic. If you are an authentic human and you've done the work on that to really understand all these pieces of your customers and your business, then that AI will give you something back that's more authentic. And then in addition to that, if you're layering on top of that, the human in the loop, which is also an additional ethical piece that you get the AI output, but then you're bringing the human in the loop and you're also bringing yourself back in and layering yourself back on top of that. It's really this dance that I think we have to learn to not only train the AI, but train ourselves back and forth of the relationship we're building with it. And I think that, like, if I really think of the core of the misconception is because a lack of education. I don't think people are really finding the right pathway to authenticity in their relationship that they're building with their AI models, and their training and their outputs. And therefore they are getting output that doesn't feel them, that doesn't resonate. So they have like this cringe factor of like, ugh, like I can't put that out. And oh, this thing is just this cringy, unethical, male built, like, and I think women go through that, right? And it is mostly male built, and it is inherent with horrendous biases that we're hopefully working on. But I think there are also ways to circumvent that and to minimize it, right? By your own relationship and training that you're building into the AI. And that goes back to the reflection of yourself, which is why I think as AI evolves, we have to evolve as leaders and as humans with this kind of emotionally intelligent reflection process that it's evolutionary, like how AI is evolving and how we evolve alongside it. And that part is critical. And I think a massive blind spot of the leaders and the people that are building these technologies right now.
What excites you most about the future for women and AI? And what
Can I ask something?
Well,
Follow I'm sorry.
he want to go.
Like, no. It goes back to what I was like asking earlier, right? I'm in a lot of CEO peer groups. I know a lot of executives, right? And I know a lot of them don't look like you or Erica, and a lot of them don't look like me, to be truthful. But the reality is I'm skeptical of not their ability to learn, but their willingness to learn and lead differently, right? From a cultural perspective. I was lucky enough that my mother worked in a local community mental health facility for almost 20 years. And she would always explain to me, you need to understand why someone is behaving a certain way, not simply react to the outbursts or the reaction, right? And so I remember 7, 8 years ago, someone told me that they're like, oh, you have pretty high emotional intelligence. I say, I don't know what that means, what you're saying, right? Until they kind of described it. And I was like, okay, maybe, right? But what I did know is that I had to lead from a culture perspective, not from a technology perspective. And a lot of these leaders that have been out there have grown to these positions because they had a very transactional role or they had an idea or something, but it was never about the people. It was never about the humanity. And so I think that is going to be a massive challenge of not can they, but are they willing to do it? And so I just wanted to, I don't know if you had a take on that, right?
Yeah, and I love what you said too. I always love the kind of the perspective of not what's wrong with that person, but what happened to that person. There's much more compassion and empathy of someone's unique lived experience. And I think that bridges into, how we, oh, gosh, it goes so deep, right? It's like our capitalistic society, and I think it's systemic. I don't think a lot of the issues we're seeing in our world right now that we're all struggling with are necessarily individual. I do believe very strongly that humans are a product of the system and the environment from which they come from. And humans are also our superpower as humans that you can see through, any anthropological perspective, is we are a social species. And, the reason why humans have flourished amongst all species on this planet is because of our capacities to tell stories. That's how we, spread with storytelling. We spread through stories about herbs and medicine and food and resources and spirituality and all these different things. And some of that's bad, some of that's good. But at the end of the day, like our capacity to tell stories on a massive scale and to bridge together and to kind of upload those narratives into a massive system has been what has been our biggest superpower and also our biggest downfall. And so I think right now, the only way to really deconstruct and transmute that system that we've built that is very toxic right now, and I hope we all agree with that because it is a challenging time right now from a system standpoint, that a lot of these systems that we have collectively built and contributed to are no longer sustainable. And that's on just about every category that you look at, right? I mean, pick one. We're struggling as a species right now and as a planet. And so I think that it really goes back to finding smaller communities and having, the ability to create new stories and new narratives and on a smaller level and create new models. And then you have to bridge it from there, right? So the beautiful part is we have podcasts. We have digital technologies to share those stories and to rework our narratives. And I think the biggest thing that those stories do is it creates hope for an entirely new perspective. And hope is what draws people forward into the future on a positive trajectory. There's this really great book that came out of MIT called Earth for All. At the conference is collaborating with a few of them too and talking about some different ideas. But the Earth for All book really looks at all these different trajectories from technology and AI advancements to the environment to economics, women's empowerment, and all these different possibilities depending on what we do now. And a lot of that goes back to having the hope that that positive trajectory is in fact possible. Like we need to have hope that that is possible, that change is possible out of the systems we're in. So I really think it comes back to being a leader in your own right, finding your community and spreading the message, and finding other like-minded people to just keep building on that story and building that hopeful narrative to start turning the ship into a slightly different direction.
Well, as we wrap up here, let's talk some about the details with this conference, all right? September 6th, September 7th, MIT. What else do we need to know?
We picked a weekend very intentionally so that people can be away from their email, because while this is very focused on AI upskilling and future proofing, it's also, really giving that reflection time to go within. So we want people to be like away from the stress of, work and emails and all that. There's a human-centered AI leadership certification component that comes with this. So by attending the 2 days of the conference and also being in the online learning platform, we'll have some coursework on there as well before that, and then we'll have assessments after the conference. And so that gives people that certification, that badge as well to, add to their resume and profiles and all of that. So that also lends additional credibility. And then you have the in-person time at MIT. And then I would say, just like for people that are coming, just be open to the experience. There's going to be a lot of people with, different backgrounds, a really diverse audience and lineup of speakers. Bring some nice, comfortable clothes. We'll be doing some stretching breaks and things like that too, and opportunities to do some body movement as well as, learning. So it'll be very, heady upskilling and then also embodied learning as well. And then the last piece is the live stream. So if you're not local in Boston, anybody anywhere in the world can attend this. So we have a virtual conference component to this as well. So, and folks that attended our last conference that did the live stream, they loved it and felt like they were still there in person. So we got a lot of great feedback around that experience too. So we'll be curating some experiences for anyone who buys a live stream ticket too. So
incredible. And Greg and I are going to be there. Greg, you want to tell them what we're up to?
I think you should.
Oh, all right. I'll take the floor. We are going to be hosting the Voice or Victim podcast live at this conference. We're going to be talking to some of the leaders that Dr. Felicia has curated and brought in so that we can really help spread this mission as well. We are super passionate about it. We are big into human-centered leadership and the people experience. So we are excited to partner with Dr. Felicia. Thanks for having us. And Dr. Felicia, thank you for being here.
This is amazing. I just want to say it.
This
is an amazing conversation.
Live. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah. I'm excited to go too. I'm like genuinely excited to just be around all these different women. I mean, change maker does not even begin to touch what some of these women are doing. I mean, it's just, I'm in awe of the women that are going to be there. So, it's going to be really incredible experience, very transformative. So I look forward to it. Just 3 months away. So
3 months away. We're going to link the conference in the show notes, and it will also be posted out there on YouTube. So y'all, if you want to come hang out with all of us, that's where you can do it. Thank you so much, Dr. Felicia.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on AI, Voice or Victim. If you want to stay competitive in the AI age, start now. Take one insight from today's episode and put it into practice in the next 24 hours. Make sure to follow us, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more actionable AI insights. See you next time.